During yesterday's 2019 NHL Winter Classic matchup between the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks, we had NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman make a bunch of announcements regarding a bunch of outdoor special event games like that coming up for the 2019-2020 season. We'll discuss all those details coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, during yesterday's NHL Winter Classic matchup between the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks, a bunch of details were revealed here by NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman for a lot of these similar type events that are scheduled coming up for the 2019-2020 NHL season. Now, of course, yesterday's NHL Winter Classic was a very successful event by the looks of it. The outdoor arena at Notre Dame seemed to be packed full of people. I mean, the crowd was fantastic. The weather was very cooperative. They didn't have, sun blaring. They didn't have snow coming down. The weather looked to be pretty as close to perfect as you can get for an outdoor NHL event like that. So overall, it's very successful. We saw the Bruins defeat the Blackhawks by a score of 4-2. So as I mentioned during the second intermission of that game, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman did reveal a bunch of details for a bunch of other special events coming up here for the following NHL season 2019-2020, with the big one being that the 2020 NHL Winter Classic next January the 1st will be held in Dallas. So obviously Dallas is not exactly your traditional kind of market when you think of Winter Classic, but of course the NHL wants to expand into different markets and try to spread around the amount of teams getting into these outdoor games. And of course there's a lot of these markets that at one point were kind of considered non-traditional, but have had hockey for a long time and are very much becoming traditional markets with big fan bases. And they need to try to get some of these other teams into the mix so that we're not constantly getting the same teams all the time. We've seen teams like Boston, Chicago, Pittsburgh, get into these events numerous times. And the main reason is that they're the teams that draw the biggest crowds at some of the biggest fan bases around the NHL, which kind of makes sense. They're not going to put together teams that are not going to sell the tickets out. But at the same time, they do need to kind of spread the love around and get these games into different markets just to be something different and unique, so that they can, not kind of be so stagnant and, a tad bit boring at times. I know some people seem to have lost interest in the outdoor game just because it's been overdone here so many times, but it's still a unique experience that the NHL keeps continuing to go with, because it's basically what boils down to money. They're still selling out lots of tickets. They're still very profitable events. So, of course, the NHL is going to continue to run with that. Now, even though we know the Dallas Stars will be the host team for the 2020 Winter Classic, we do not know exactly who their opponent's going to be. That's going to be revealed at a later date. Commissioner Gary Bettman said he's going to consult with the Dallas Stars team as well as the NHL League Board of Governors and determine who is the best opponent for the Dallas Stars for this event. Now, it would only make the most sense if it's probably a division rival, somebody who they have a little bit more history with. Personally, I'd really like to see a team like the Nashville Predators get into a game like this. Obviously, they're Central Division rivals, so that kind of makes sense. The Predators have had a lot of success in the last number of regular NHL seasons. And of course, not too long ago, they had a run to the Stanley Cup Final. They're a very solid team. I think they'd be a very solid draw. They'd probably get a fair bit of people coming down from Nashville for that event. So personally, I think the Preds would be a tremendous opponent. Of course, you could also look back to maybe like Minnesota as well. Would also make a lot of sense. Of course, the old Minnesota North Stars relocated and became the Dallas Stars. So to have the old Minnesota franchise, which became Dallas, against the current Minnesota franchise would kind of be a unique experience as well. So, of course, I'd love to hear your comments down below. And let me know, who do you think would be the ideal opponent for Dallas in the 2020 Winter Classic? And what do you think of a different city like that being the host? I mean, like I said, when you think Dallas, you don't exactly think winter, pond hockey, and all those traditional things that comes with the Winter Classic. Not only is Texas a really big state, but hockey's been growing in popularity down there. The Stars have been there a long time, so I do think it'd be good for the franchise to give it a good boost here to host an event like this. Commissioner Bettman also revealed that the 2020 NHL ALL-STAR Game is going to be going back to St. Louis. Now, this will be the third time that the Blues have hosted the ALL-STAR Game. They've hosted 2 times previously. The other 2 times they hosted were back in 1970 and again in 1988. So again, this is another event that I know some fans have kind of lost interest in, for example, but it's still a big moneymaker for the NHL. They get to put all their top stars on display in one arena at one time. So there's a fairly big draw. They always have the skills competition. It's still an event that the NHL seems very much interested in keeping in the schedule and pursuing here. So it's something that's not going to be going away by the looks of it anytime soon. Of course, when they do have Olympic participation like we had in the past, we do sometimes get an all-star break, if you will, from the all-star game in those Olympic years. But we'll see here if the NHL ever gets back to the Olympics and when that happens in the future. But for next year, for 2020, the all-star game will be held in St. Louis. Now, of course, the Heritage Classic, which is normally always taking place here in Canada with amongst a couple Canadian teams, is going to be held next year in Regina at Mosaic Stadium. Now, of course, that's the home of the CFL Saskatchewan Roughriders, and the two teams participating in that event will be the Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Regina is a terrific market. There's all kinds of love for hockey in the province of Saskatchewan, and unfortunately, they don't seem to have a big enough market there to really hold an NHL team. But really, between Regina and Saskatoon, even though they're smaller cities compared to a lot of U.S. markets, there's certainly an argument to be made that, just maybe they could support NHL hockey in that province. I know at one point in time, a long time ago, there was a push to try to get an NHL team there. But of course, Regina is kind of in the middle here between Alberta and Manitoba, so kind of a neutral spot for the Jets and the Flames to take part here. Obviously, they're kind of right in the middle of the two NHL cities, so it should be a good location. I do expect them to put on a good game, and of course, those are two great teams right now that should put a very fun, tightly contested matchup on, in Regina. The Jets and Flames are both having solid seasons right now. Hopefully they can continue that into next year and make the Heritage Classic in 2020 extremely competitive and fun to watch. So, of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Heritage Classic being held in a neutral location like Regina. Like I said, I know that there's lots of hockey fans there, so I don't have any doubt at all you'll see the local people of Regina be quite interested in this event, as well as people from Winnipeg and Calgary and other markets making the travel to take in this event. I have no doubt about it. The other event revealed for the 2019-2020 season during this second intermission segment with Commissioner Gary Bettman was one of the games that will take place in the Stadium Series. Now, we could very well see future announcements for other games throughout that 2019-2020 season, but for right now, they've revealed that the Colorado Avalanche will be hosting one of those games. That game will be hosted at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and again, like the Winter Classic in Dallas, the opponent is to be determined, so that has not been determined or announced as of yet. So I guess we'll see it. Again, like I said, for Dallas, when you're going to have these games, it makes sense to have as big of a rival, if at all possible, to be the opponent for the team to get a bigger draw, which the NHL likes to do. Now, of course, with a lot of the past Winter Classic and other Stadium Series games, we've quite often seen original six matchups or interstate rivalries, whatnot. So again, who do you think would make a good opponent for the Colorado Avalanche? Obviously, the Dallas Stars hosting the Winter Classic are also in the Central Division, so maybe one of the other teams in that division. We've already got the Jets taking part in an outdoor game next year. If the Predators do end up being the team for the Stars, then obviously it wouldn't make sense to put them in that game versus the Avalanche, but maybe we could see Nashville take part in that game versus Colorado. Like I said, maybe we could have Minnesota be the opponent for Dallas. I think Minnesota, in a way, almost makes more sense just because you can have, like they said, the old version of the franchise from Minnesota who moved to Dallas versus the new incarnation of the Minnesota Wild. So for me, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe the Predators go down and play the Avalanche. But again, as always, like I said, I want to hear your thoughts. Who should be the opponents for these two events taking place in the 2019-20 season? And also, what are your thoughts on the outdoor games in general, as well as the All-Star Game? Do you think the NHL should keep up with this? Are you interested? Do you watch? Would you go to one if you had a chance to go in person? I want to know your thoughts, because there seems to be quite a mix of a reaction out there for people that are kind of still very interested in it, think it's a really cool idea. Then there's still a big chunk of the fan base that seem to have lost interest and just don't seem to care too much anymore. So I want to know what your thoughts are, and we'll continue the conversation down in the comments section. So if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.